thought that if I'm relating it to that long hair isn't all it's chalked up to be. And regardless if there's crocodile people in the manhwa or not, that should not change or just give an excuse for the physics of hair to be whatever the hell you want them to be.
No, but
that's my
AoA, that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah. Open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, clocked in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with my boys Isaiah.
Yo, yo, yo.
And Gavin.
Ooh, what's going on?
And today we are here to get into our deep dive analysis on Tower of God, Season 2 of the Webtoon, this time chapters 96 to 110. Finally got that right. Yeah! Sorry, I was like, oh, nail it. But anyway, so we're here to discuss those things today. If you missed our live stream, I definitely recommend you go check that out. It was a blast, so much fun, great reactions, lovely people in chat all around. Thank you for the support for everyone who did come and hang out with us. But if not, and you missed it, you definitely should go check that out. But yeah, so we're here. We're going to go into some of the key points as usual that we would in so far as reading the chapters that we have today. We had some of the brilliant people from our Discord kind of put some of their thoughts to the forefront in terms of what we think, what they think we should talk about, what points are relevant, and, just to hear our thoughts and opinions on certain fun things as well, like shipping and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into that as well. So make sure if you guys want your opinions to be heard, especially after these live streams when it comes to these deep dive analysis, that you are joining the Discord so you could interact and conversate with all these brilliant and wonderful people, and you could also put your opinions to the front as well. So, and as always, folks, if you enjoy the content today, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of our discussion? What did you think of our live stream if you watched it? What did you think about these chapters in general? And what do you think about Tower of God as a whole? Let us know all of those thoughts. You could refer to the description with our links to, like I said, our Discord. If you want to support the channel, you can hit us up on patreon.com/AoA show as well. You could buy some of our awesome merch that we now have, anything from fanny packs to pillows to leggings to shirts to hoodies to everything. Like literally it's all up there. So you can go check that out and rep some AoA merch if you would like. We'd certainly like you to. So go check it out. Hit us up on the socials as well and the audio only platforms if you want to listen to us while you're on the go and you can't watch us. But anyway, hopping right into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is by popular request, we had Sophie's backstory and Beta's backstory, although Beta is kind of like a very side note to this, being that he's just incorporated with Sophie, but more so Sophie and her backstory now that it's been a little more fleshed out, and the fact that she wants Beta to live on and all that kind of stuff, and what we think. Do we buy it? Do we not? Do we feel for her? Even if we didn't, do we feel a sense of, redemption for her as well, that we think she's deserving of that redemption now that she's trying to let those, the kids, I guess, go on board the Archimedes, all that kind of stuff? What are our thoughts? Gavin, hit me.
So in a weird way, I buy her story, and I do think that she was probably an orphan and had all these things, and I feel like deep down she probably has her best intentions in mind. However, I really don't think that she actually used her brain and thought about what she was doing and the circumstances that these kids are quite literally going through, and especially if she's equating their happiness into it, in what way do you feel like you can make them happy by doing the things that you're doing to them? And even if you're trying to have interactions with them similar to a mom in a way, or be a friend or be someone to talk to, do you really? Granted, it did work out for Teddy Bear, but obviously it wasn't really by her volition. It was more or less they were hanging on to the fact that she was the only person that ever was nice to them until he met, Bam and everybody else who ensued in Wangnam and such. And then you look at the other side of it, Casino, who yes, clung to Sophia, but it's the complete 180. That's because he wasn't able to find anybody to solidify him and ground him, to be a person and actually have feelings for other people. So I see where she's coming from, yes, and the ideas behind it, but it's you literally did everything that you aren't supposed to do if that's genuinely how you feel, if that's the case. I don't get why she would want to be a researcher even if she was forced to and do these things when her goal is something that is quite literally opposite. And I don't know. she signed up for the wrong job, bro. You need to do something a little bit better if this is your goal. But like, I understand your train of thought, but like, bro, you're doing
I think it's
experiments
like
on
a
these
weird
kids.
because she also is kind of a victim of circumstance in
Yeah.
her own right. So I feel as if she's trying to make the best out of the situation she was given. Now, it might be easy for people to come out and be like, well, you just, deny doing any sort of research. You deny doing anything. Like, you come out. But, like, again, we don't get a full fleshed out story of, like, a beat by beat. But, no. I'd have to assume that thought probably went through her head at some point. She just deemed it. And, again, not that that's right. I'm not defending that. I'm saying that, maybe that was a better decision to not do what she did. I would probably err towards that, but I'm just saying, I guess if I'm trying to give her any semblance of hope there, that I would assume that she's like just misguided in the sense that it's like, well, we're here, this is going to happen, I might as well hop on board and try and,
I get it, but it's like how many hundreds of thousands of kids, or it was like 99,000 kids died in the first one. So like B, all the kids that you say that you're trying to help, you're not. Yeah. And even the 2 or 3 by chance that you are trying to help, fucking when Ilmar came back and finally saw her, and he was like, oh my God. And she's like, oh wow, you got big. And it's like, bro, like no hug, no, like that compassion just isn't there that she's saying that she has for these kids, or like feels like she should like show toward them to have a happier life. And it's like, you're not delivering on like any aspect that you're saying that you're trying to like hit on. So
no, I get it.
I don't know. Like I get it, but she just really kind of fell below the bar.
Go ahead.
I don't really have any sympathy for her, if I'm being honest, because I just don't buy it, man. Like it's one thing, like actions speak louder than words in my mind. Like you can tell me that you want this for these kids, but like, I mean, you gave me the numbers yourself, dude. 99,000 kids, and you're telling me you give a fuck, and you want like all of them died, and you're like, oh well, if you have to be sacrificed, it's like everything you're saying sounds nice, but I don't believe that you actually have these kids' best interests at heart, because Bam put it himself best. The things that actually would have made these kids happy is to have a semblance of a life or a semblance of affection, which is the one thing she didn't give any of them, right? She gave them these, speaking about Teddy Bear and Cassino specifically, like these names and, this little bit of comfort, but it was one way, right? It meant so much more to the kids than it did to her. And if you're going to give them that, but like, it's just a farce, right? It's just to continue doing the research, and it's just to keep their, spirits up. Like, that's not the same thing as like actually giving a fuck about these kids. And you're not going to tell me, especially with someone like Beta, that like she watched him go through whatever he went through and like actually cared about like making him happy, because clearly none of those kids are happy, and that's not a happy situation to be in. And if all they want is to be out of that, like, it'd be one thing if they came to the lab willingly, right? And they're like, yo, I'm kind of like really feeling about being like the world's first ignition weapon or the strongest or whatever, but like nobody asked to be here. So if nobody asked to be here and you're making these kids go through this, and all they're saying is things like, this sucks and it's painful, and like, I don't know, like in my mind, it's like, put 2 and 2 together, sweetheart. Like, you're not doing what you think you're doing here. So like, wake the fuck up and like connect the dots here. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I'm like split down the middle with her, because it's like, I agree with the points that are pervade, but like at the same time, I feel like she has this twisted sense of, like, okay, I actually do think she wants what's best for them, but I don't think she goes about it the right way at all. And I think that she is like, I can't find the right term, but like she's misguided. Like she's not going down the right road in that sense. And she's like, oh, well, my goal, objective, make kids happy. But she's like, how do I get to said objective? Pump them full of whatever the hell, make them the perfect weapon. That way they'll be happy, they'll be strong, they'll be whatever. And it's like, well, that's not the way to go. And I feel like the reason, the main reason as to why I do think that she does wish for their happiness, even though it's in a weird, skewed, distorted kind of way, is because of what she does at the end here, where she's like, listen, like, whatever you do, after seeing Beta do all that kind of stuff and lashing out, the fact that she's like, listen, like, it's not Bam, you don't have to lash out against these people. And then as a final request to Laro Row is like, listen, if anything, please just take these, please take him, please take these, look after them, and, do what you can to try and assimilate them into whatever's going on. Like, that's my last request here. Because you have to assume that this whole operation's a bust at this point. Like, whoever's going to come in, like, the jig's up. You know what I mean? In terms of, like, the experimentations, the whole organization, all that kind of crap that's on the workshop, everything, shit just hit the fan. So she's probably out of a job. She's probably like, well, I mean, not to put it lightly, but you get my point. Like, she's, the fact is that at the end of the day, the last request was like, I'm not trying to like run and save my own ass. Like, please just go and take care of them. And again, you could take, little bit, again, I'm not like dying on the hill to support her, because at the end of the day,
I think at the end she definitely learned like her lesson, and through BAM and like seeing what actually makes these kids happy. But she even said it herself. She's like, I thought it would make them happy if they became the perfect weapon. It's like, again, who even asked to become this weapon? And like that's not where she ends up, because where she ends up is a great place. It's a much better place than she starts out. But her characters up to that point.
Yeah, she's like, I thought they'd be happy if they do what I think would make them happy, instead of asking them what would make them happy.
Well, like, also too, we do have to remember though, this is a one key point that can't be overlooked. She is not in charge of like the entire lab. Yeah. So like when they're going and they're like, okay, organization A is like getting X amount of kids, and like this is what we're doing. Like, at least what I would have to assume is that she can't, like, she doesn't have the authority to go in and be like, no, we're gonna do this another way. Like, if they say that, like, this is how we're conducting said test, that's how they're conducting the test. Now, I'm not defending her. No. I get it, because you're about to go off. But I'm just saying that I'm not defending her. But what I'm saying is that, like, she, again, in a distorted view, given the circumstances she had, you know what I mean, was like, okay, this is how I think, I can service the children that are alive, or whatever the case is. I guess my point is that, like, because she's not in charge of like the whole shebang, there is blame to be put on her in the sense that she does not get out guilt-free. But I don't think that like not that you're saying this, but like, I don't think that all the blood is on her hands. And I don't think that it's like, oh, you were cool with 99,000 kids dying. I don't know if I'd go that far.
No, and I'm not defending that, but what I'm getting at is quite literally what she says, and that's, oh, I thought they would be happy if they were given this power and were able to utilize it. Like, that was her thought process going with it, and that's all I'm saying, where it's like, it just wasn't a correct mindset. Did she have the best intentions? Yeah, probably, but the fact of the matter is, she more or less, if she had to be okay and compliant with what was going on, it still wasn't, she still thought that the kids would be happy if they had gotten this power, and seeing Cassino and Ilmar, how they are now, realizing that, wow, they aren't happy even after this power, oh shit, and then that's where that realization brought in that Isaiah brought up, that's why she had that like thing with the audience where she was like, oh shit, like, this isn't actually happiness that they get from. And that's all I'm trying to say, is she did think that giving them power was going to bring them some sort of happiness in the end, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. So. Hopefully, I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's a redeeming quality. But anyway, moving on.
We'll never see her again.
We have, right? Watch, she's like a major character. All right, next we have My Phone Decides to Not Do It. But we have Endorsi dropping Mad Dog. Well, really just the fight, right? Because we have this fight between with Bam, Rak, and Khun versus Reflejo, whatever, and Mr. Flex. And then we also have Endorsi and Hots, but really kind of Endorsi with a little bit of Hots versus Mad Dog. And the epicness that ensues there, and the epicness of Endorsi using her bung bung to basically teleport into the sky and drop Mad Dog from very high, because he claims to be impenetrable at this point, which is an interesting matchup for Endorsi, like Hots had stated, because Endorsi, kind of like a knock prior, and like that, they're so used to just putting the smackdown on any opponent that comes their way through raw strength that they've never had to literally figure out a way to advance through these weird obstacles, whether it be like these people using a shizload of trickery or anything like that, or, her being able to, have to outmaneuver them, or dealing with an opponent that's essentially invulnerable to any sort of physical attack. So that was interesting, and I was curious to hear if you guys had any sort of thoughts on the fight and that panel specifically, talking about Endorsi versus Mad Dog, because we'll get to Bam's fight in a minute. But.
Yeah. I personally loved it. It was really cool to see. One, I mean, we've mentioned before, but it's just nice to see any of these characters, like in a fight and like, or team up and plan tactics, because all of these combatants are different in terms of how they fight, right? Some are, your Endorosis or your Nox, where they're a little bit more physical and like raw. I'm just gonna hit this dude. And, then you have your lighthouses, people who are a little bit more tactical and a little bit more like, all right, well, how do I outmaneuver or out-trick said opponent? So it's nice to see these people team up in this way, like Hots and Endorosi, as, I guess, brief of a team up as it was, again, it is nice to see that, like, I guess these people know each other well enough, right? Or understand how each other fight well enough to be able to, like, utilize each other's strengths in combat. And it was definitely, like, because we haven't really seen the bong bong work in any way outside of transportation right now up until this moment. So it's cool to see, whether that's Endorsi learning more about how to use the bong bong, because she even has a moment later in the chapters where, she has this whole debacle about, like, the bong bong's out of energy and, like, how does she charge it, where it's like she's finally, like, starting, and this sort of ties in with this fight here, she's finally, like, starting to learn that she's gonna need to utilize, like, thought in fight instead of just, like, bare bones running in and slapping anybody in her path, because, she's gonna get to a point where the enemies are not, these random regulars anymore, and, like, they are, whether they're, rankers or just people higher up or other princesses or people who have these random buffs and abilities or whatever the fuck, that just straight kicking everything in the face is not gonna be enough. So it was nice to see her, like, utilize this trick.
Yeah, for sure, which was very probably terrifying for anyone that's in that situation right there.
Yeah, anyone but Mad Dog, because even though he gets dropped, he's like, whatever.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, you just got dropped from, like, fucking, like, what?
Yeah, that was wild. Anyway, so moving on to the second fight, and the one that, was the highlight of this read-through, which would be the epic showdown between Bam, Rak, Khun, and Reflejo, or Mr. Flex. So this was, and also, Reflejo's character after the fact as well. But this was awesome too, and I chose this panel in particular because we get the Thorn highlighted here, which finally awakens itself after the initial battle ensues. And it was really interesting to find out that Reflejo was really had this, like, shadow form, which I thought was really cool because it was kind of like a direct counter to Bam's style of fighting, to be precise, until the Thorn kind of comes in and saves his ass. And, Reflejo at this point is what? Upper rank B, I think he said?
Well,
Or he can, like,
yeah,
can access that
the
power.
ability of the shadow power, like, brings his strength up to what would be a B rank, right?
Yeah, so that was pretty insane. I thought this fight was incredible. We even had during the live stream, we tried to incorporate a little bit of music at some point to kind of, like, build up the hype around it. But this was cool, and I think, and I finally understand now what this symbol is that Bam has over his head, because a lot of people have this, like, their profile pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? I've never seen that. It's like a Jahad thing. And then when it kind of finally manifested itself, I was like, oh, damn, like, that's it. It's the Thorn. So it's here to stay, and just Bam unlocking its powers ever so slightly will be kind of cool to see as he grows into, a bigger and better character, essentially. But yeah, this fight was incredible, and I'm really excited to see where we go from here. Do you have any thoughts on it, Gavin?
No, I thought it was dope, and I really liked how they went on Flex in terms of, like, his mindset in terms of where he ended in all of this, and the, like, more or less tragedy that he's been through with, seeing one of the he was one of the princesses, and her being so beautiful that, like, literally just fucking insta-blinded him. And then, you learn later on that, like, he pretty much, his eyes are sewn shut, and somebody literally, I don't know if that was him, but Drew just
No. It was, so the princess didn't literally blind him. He was punished for looking at her. Because the person who was with her was like, how dare somebody as low as you look at a princess of Jahad.
Yeah, they gouged his eyes out.
Yeah.
Sewed his eyelids over, and then drew the Jahad symbol, and axed this whole
Yeah.
clan.
And
So
axed this whole clan.
there's that. Yeah, to
It was
really
not
shame
easy.
him.
Not easy to.
Well, at the end of the day, you realize why he joined Fug, right? I mean, this isn't just
Well,
like...
that's a good question, right?
know?
Do we, after seeing this, right? Because when we were in the live stream, it was fine. We were joking around. We were like, oh, screw this guy, because he had taken Haorian as well, which was like, oh, no, like, this guy's really just pushing back. Like, what are you doing? There's a lot of disdain for him. I was wondering, though, if there was any sort of, different thoughts now, understanding where his backstory is, trying to take the character bias out of it. You know what I mean? Like, pretend it's like, just in general, in the objective, do you feel a little bit more for this guy? Do you not? Why not?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's more self-explanatory. Look what fucking happened to the guy. Like, it's one of those things where obviously not all bad. Like, there are people who are bad just to be bad, but then, like, there obviously are, most bad people, I would say, are bad for actual XYZ reasons. And what we are here to, like, really put into context is whether those reasons are justifiable or not. And seeing his case and the things that he have been through, for me, I can see a pretty valid reason on why he has done these things. And I think that speaks just for the fact that he's literally been hiding himself for like thousands of years just to achieve his goal in the end of it. Like, this wasn't something that is just a petty little revenge or whatever that he's trying to get one-offed on. Like, this guy has based like many existences off of getting like to this point and wanting to achieve it. And you don't have to sell me on why, because like you just look at him. So
Yeah.
I can definitely see where he's coming from. Obviously, we're not going to like it because he's fucking with our favorite characters on the matter. But like, again, how many irregulars come into this tower, and how many opportunities are you going to have to get for this exact situation to happen again? You already had Yurik, you know, that ship has sailed and gone. Now you have Bam, a new irregular. How many 100 years has it been? He's already been in isolation for thousands. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer why he's jumping on this bandwagon and going for it, because it's like any other FUG member. This is probably their one shot, because who knows how long it's going to take for another irregular to come into the tower. So, like, for me, everything lines up for why he's doing it, or why he's doing these things. And it sucks, but, like, again, it plays to his story and just everything that he's about, so...
Well, again,
it is
so
what it is.
knowing why he's done it, do you sympathize with him?
I don't really ultimately no, because it's like, I get his backstory, and it is hard to penalize him too much when you learn it, right? Because he essentially, like I'm sure many characters we will meet in going forward, is a victim of the system here. He's a victim of the tower and all the higher ups that play into it. But like, it's hard to watch someone like Bam or Wangnan go through this journey and fight and struggle to keep the mindset that they have, and then watch all these other characters essentially just up and quit on that. And it's hard for me to sympathize with them, because especially with someone like Mr. Flex, the whole thing, or I should not say that, because again, I do sympathize with him, but ultimately, I guess, like, agree with him or take his side, because to me, ultimately, it's about one of his last lines that he says in the fight, which is, he said, I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of like, gods are cruel and unfair. It's unfair that someone like you would get all this power. If I had this power, I would absolutely change the tower and not squander about my meaningless life or something like that. Yeah. But that's just it, right? He's been so encased in this like anger and this revenge because of the wrongs that were done to him, that like that's all he wants. And I think he's confusing his vengeance against the people at the top of the tower with changing the tower. I think changing the tower to him just means axing all the people up at top. But as we've stated before, that's not going to change the tower. That's not, it takes more than that. It takes more than the mindset of like, I'm going to fuck over all the people who fucked me over to get any real difference and any real change in this tower. And I think it's going to take somebody like Bam, who, despite things that are going on, can look at these things objectively and look at these things a little bit more outside the window of like, all right, who wronged me and who fucked me over the most? So, you know what I mean? Because that's, sure, anybody with the power of the Thorn or with the power of Yurik or an irregular or whatever, could, arguably march up all the way to the top, right? And fucking axe Jahad's head off. And then but then it's like, all right, what now? This whole system was run on this man's shoulders, and like now he's gone. All you did was create a power vacuum now. But that's because changing the tower isn't what matters to him. It's getting revenge. It's making sure the people who did that to him know that that's wrong. And that's fair. That's a fair desire to have. But that desire is not the same thing as wanting a desire to change the tower. I think characters like Bam, and even more so actually Wangnan, actually want to see this tower stay, but want to see it change. They want a different world than the one that's created all these kinds of conflicts.
No, that's very well put, and I have to agree with it. There's also a line that kind of, for me, made it a little harder to sympathize as well, where kind of along the lines of what you were saying, but he says something along the lines of, it seems that the Thorn has chosen you as its god, but I don't. And it's like, he's like, it doesn't even matter that it chose you. And it's like, to me, that really solidifies the motivations, where it's like, you don't really care about the change. You don't care. You not only want revenge, but you want it only to be exactly your way, which adds this air of selfishness. And it's like, if you really cared about changing the tower or really realizing your goals, you would understand that there has to be this air of adaptability to that. And that you can't just, you can't force it in a way that you want to, because that's just not how life works. So the fact that Bam came along and it was clearly chosen. You know what I mean? By this, like, there should be a little bit of a humility sandwich there where you're just like, okay, like, I'm not totally with this right now, but like, you know, I think this might be the way to do it. But I think, again, a lot of he's blinded by the fact, because he wants revenge so bad, that's when that line comes in later, where he's like, he says it almost directly after, where he's like, you know, God is not fair in that you have all this power, but you're not even going to use it for what? Like, he doesn't trust that he doesn't trust that the goal will be done in his own way. And to be fair, again, you know, you said this before, like, it makes sense. It does make sense, because it's like, if you... Like, because let's be honest, too. The anime and stories have, like, a really good way of doing this. And sometimes it goes neglected or just, like, not talked about at times, where it's, like, because they're the villain. And a lot of times, like, these antagonists in the moment, not gonna lie, have had, like, a way worse backstory than even some of our protagonists. And, like, you know, we'll take Bam and Wangnan as an example. And yeah, there's an argument where it's like, it could be subjective. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, getting everyone axed as opposed to being betrayed. Like, there's this weird scale of justice, like, who had it worse, right? And at the end of the day, it's not a competition. But point is that, like, you know, let's take Bam for an example. You know, that'd be like if Bam, like, all of his team got axed. You know what I mean? Like, if he just, like, glanced in the wrong way, and it's like, oh, here's your eyes. You know what I mean? And we're going to slaughter Khun, Rak, the whole nine. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, there might be an alternate universe here where Bam isn't so happy-go-lucky. You know what I mean? Is kind of marred by this whole system in, like, a way more mean way. You know what I mean? Than someone like his true self right now in the universe that we know him in. So yeah, again, I think it's a long-winded way of saying that I agree with your points where it's like, you know, it can be tough because, like, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense what he's trying to do. And it's like, if you've waited for this long, harbored this much resentment, you know what I mean? It makes sense that you're like, if you have any semblance of doubt that this objective is going to get done, this is your one shot. You're like, I'm not risking it on you, who just wants to, like, go around and, like, play with his friends and, like, oh, I don't want to go to the top of the tower and kill Jahad. And it's like, no, dude, like, you're going, you know? So
it definitely makes sense. And again, it's like why I try to not falter him too hard. But, like, I don't know, because, like, again, I guess what ultimately still puts me in the camp that I'm in is, like, your struggles are not by themselves, like, what define you, right? And this is, like, sort of what you were saying, where it's like, you know, who had it worse at the end of the day can be subjective, right? Because it's not like it's not like, oh, I had it worse, so I have more of a right to be like this, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you are still responsible for the decisions you make. And it's funny that I actually ripped on Beta last week so much for being in this mindset, because this is actually sort of the ultimatum of where Beta would have ended up had he not had that shift in the chapters where we just started, where it's like, to be so consumed by, like, this desire to destroy the things that hurt you and not want to create an environment instead where those things don't happen is, like, what put him here. That's what got him killed. That's, like, it's that thing, and that thing I think has been a part of him, you know, since the jump, right? Regardless of what happened, the situation, the things he went through, obviously exasperate, like, or, you know, like, drag that up to 11. But I don't think, like, it's hard for me to watch people, like, again, Bam and Wangnan struggle, and, like, because ultimately it is easier, I should say, to just give up, right? To just give into this anger and this hatred and this feeling of, like, all right, I just want to fuck over the world because the world's fucked me over. It is so much harder to get fucked over and be like, all right, well, hold on, let me take a step back and, like, how can I make this different so that we don't have to worry about this happening again? And I think it's hard for me to watch characters like that make that decision every time, and then to see somebody squander it and be like, oh, well, he had it pretty bad. It's like, it's almost not the point. You know what I mean? Because you could have any, you know, pick X bad scenario, but it's like, it's what you do with it that makes you worth anything.
Yeah, but I think it's also something to put in the fact that it also matters on who's around you, and especially for his case, excuse me, anybody who was around him and was his support system was killed in that incident. Oh my God, excuse me, including his family. So obviously the route that he turned afterwards was Fug. I mean, that's how he led here, or at least you'd assume, unless there's more to his backstory, which there is. But either way, Fug, if you're going into another community of people whose sole purpose is revenge against Jahad and killing that person, right then and there, he doesn't have people to rely on to get him out of an ill mindset. If anything, he is surrounding himself with people that are giving him or feeding into his negative thoughts on getting revenge. And that is where you get stuck in the problem that he's at now, where it's not just of a flick of a switch and a change of the mindset like Beta had, because at the end of the day, Beta didn't have anybody. There was nobody pushing his ill thoughts, really, other than Casanova, which you can argue. And then until he met Bam and had that interaction, bam, it was like a switch, because now he met somebody who's like, oh, okay, I never really thought of this way in terms of thinking. Like, you're changing my mental psyche. This guy just had it shit from the rip, where not only does everybody dead, but now that he is surrounded by Fug people, there isn't anybody who can really be there as a guiding mentor or whatever to be like, hey, you're kind of fucked up. Like, you should really sit down and, like, he is not going to sit down and reflect on himself after everything that's happened, especially when he's paired with the people that he is, i.e. Fug. So that's where I feel for him more, because he never had a chance at all to even reflect on himself, because he's never been around a group of people who would have allowed that to happen, or honestly, people who've ever cared for him. And when you're living alone in that isolation for however many thousands of years, honestly, I think he was pretty sane for everything that happened and like everything that occurred. Like, that's why I kind of like his character, because I can really feel for the reasons why he did it. And he does recognize Bam's power and everything that happens to him. And that's why he says, I don't like it, but he's still like, I don't like it, I don't believe it. But at the end of the day, just him saying that, he is recognizing the force that Bam is and can be. And it's just pretty much him on himself, kind of hating his life, where he's like, fuck, I kind of wish this happened sooner, and like, I didn't go down this route, and maybe things could have changed. Although that wasn't his mindset, I can see how if he was stopped a little bit earlier on in his life's journey, he very well could have made the right decision towards things. It's just that guidance that he was missing that our main characters are lucky enough to have, like Bam and other people, because they could have very well went down this road if they didn't have the support system, i.e. Teddy Bear, even Bam himself. Like, you know, that's just the whole play with it. But I don't know. I think that's why I like his character so much. It's
yeah,
just
he's
like,
definitely complex.
Yeah, you feel bad.
Yeah.
But
I think it shed some cool light on his character, you know, after the fight, learning that. Briefly talking about XiaXia and her defection, I guess, over to the good guys from Fug, and it turns out that she really just was in it for the money, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is interesting,
And
because
Bam.
we had this whole back and forth where it's like, are you going to be my god? And like, don't do that stuff. And it's like, okay, that tells me it's not just for the money, that you would actually do that. And then now she's like, oh, well, I'm like looking for these guys. Like, I have to watch over these hostages for $1 million and all that kind of stuff. And then she's like, okay, never mind. I'm going to go this way. And it was like, oh, okay. Because I like, again, her telling Bam, because she's like, I'm in it for the money. Bam's like, you're not in it for the money. And then when he does that thing in the one test, then she's like, hey, never do that thing again, you know, because like my God is not going to do something like that again. And I was like, oh, okay. Was that just like for her to like really go like deep undercover or whatever? Or does she really care about? Because it didn't. Let me put it this way. It didn't seem like she cared so much about Bam specifically at that point, more than she cared about, again, because we had a conversation about this, about conforming God to what her image of God would be. So it just kind of threw me off that she was just like, it really was about the money. You know what I mean? It was like $1 million. I'm going to go with these guys now. And like, you know what I mean? Like everything's hunky dory. That threw me off. I'm not going to lie. I was not expecting that. And it like, I don't know. I didn't see the signs to that. It seemed like it kind of came out of left field for me personally.
I mean, honestly, I believe it, because she very much comes off of a person similar to like a Prince or a Wang Nan, where it's like she is very much just, not that she's fickle, but she goes with the flow in a way that it's whatever suits her more, that's the decision that she's going to make. And at the end of the day, I feel like she has a heavy allegiance with Bam for the mere fact that she sees him as a god figure and wants him to fulfill a duty, i.e. being with Fug. However, I don't think she's really married to the name Fug as much as, oh my God, this irregular is more like a savior in a sense, or like he still has this like duty that he needs to fulfill. I think she's more just like kind of putting his cards more on his side and doesn't really care about Fug, because at the end of the day, Fug is looking for Bam to make these decisions. If Bam isn't a part of it, Fug can't really do anything without Bam. So why would she go back to Fug when she's like, fuck it, I'm just going to chill with Bam and do his thing, you know? Like, it's not about, like, I feel like she has something with Bam.
I think when we last week's episode, or whatever episode when we initially talked about that with her, I think my perspective was in a different place. And I think like just through talking about her character more and interacting with a lot of the viewers and stuff, I definitely see where her mindset is definitely was much more geared towards getting this money, right? And like whether that means she has to play up this role of delivering Bam to Fug or making him stay in Fug, whatever. But like, let's take that scene, you know, when Bam basically tells off the fake followers in the tournament and then meets XiaXia in the hallway, and she's like, don't ever do that. Like, a god wouldn't do that. I don't think that it's the perspective of her being like, no, don't ever do that again. My god wouldn't do that. It was her being like, look, I need this paycheck, and if I'm going to get this paycheck, you need to be Fug's god. So, and Fug's god wouldn't do that. So, like, cut that shit out because you're fucking with my shit now. Which is at least, in conversations with viewers and stuff that I've had, that was the perspective that she was coming at. And so now it really does sort of feel like kind of what you're saying, Gavin, where it's like, you know, again, not to say that she's fickle or anything, but it's like, 1,000,000 points or not, like, if she just dies here, like, she's not getting anything ever. You know what I mean? So it's like this, I think it's this instinct almost for survival where she's like, all right, well, fuck it. Like, this whole thing's going to shit. Like, who even knows if Fug's going to give me these points now that Bam is bailing? So I might as well go with them. You know what I mean? And again, whether, I don't even know if I would go so far as to say that, like, she's developed a liking for Bam. You know, maybe that happens later. You know, I don't know. But I don't even think that so much is what drives this decision as much as, like, a pure, like, survival decision, you know, to be like, well, fuck it. Like,
well, I don't even mean
here?
like, oh, she's in love with Bam. I think it's more he's still referred to her as a god in a sense. So, like, if anything, if I was in her shoes, like, I'd bank on him more than anybody else.
No, and that's what I mean. It's like, if Bam was the, you know, the prize cow, right, and he's leaving, like, if that was her reason to stay because she needed him to be here to get paid, what is she doing here? You know what I mean? She's got to follow the money. So I think it was more of like a, you know, at least in my opinion, like a survival instinct where she's like, well, fuck.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird. I don't know. I thought it was a little weird.
You think she's playing like double agent, like double agent?
I don't know. I actually just don't like her character. It's like, I don't think it's weird. I'm like I don't know. Because again, if it's like only for the money, she gives up the money to do that. Because she's like, I just gave up on 1,000,000. So again, that's where I'm like, okay, I guess it wasn't. But then again, like, you know what I mean? But then, I don't know. She's just like, this
she
weird,
definitely plays this line of like being the type of person who's like, I do X, Y, and Z for the money, right? And then gives you instances where she does something that doesn't directly correlate to getting paid, which you could make, you're like, okay, well then it's not about the money. And again, like I said before, who's to say how much of any of the decisions she's made in the last few chapters are all strictly about getting paid, or if it is a manner of she's starting to become influenced by these people and is developing somewhat of a bond to them. To what extent, we don't know. But I do think that, like, let's, again, from the way back in the tournament arc, or, you know, the tournament that happened up until this moment, that's where her mindset was not an allegiance with Fug. It was an allegiance with getting points. And I think up until now, that is, you know, at least personally, I think that's starting to be tested. Kind of like something going on with Howard Reunion, where it's like seeing Bam and his friends and his group like constantly sort of overcome these obstacles that seem impossible to overcome is like starting to make them think, even if it's just a little bit, like, all right, maybe these guys are like kind of worth fucking with. You know what I mean? So again, that's not saying that like she's now like, oh, you know what, I kind of like really want Bam's dick right now. But I think that I think there is a little bit of like an emotional decision being made here.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where or if and what her character does in the future. And I feel as if, I don't know, I would like to see there be relevance to her joining, is my point. So, like,
sure. I think there is, because I think later when Khun says we're going to split up into two teams, he puts XiaXia on the secondary team. You see
but I mean like more than that. I don't mean just like, you're like incorporated as like a Prince thing now, where it's like, okay, we forgive you, like come in, be part of our merry band, and you know what I mean? I'm saying like an actual relevancy as to why, because then it just seemed like this whole, I don't know, it seems like she's like not needed at that rate, because it's just like she's so back and forth. I'm curious to see, you know, if in the future there's like, you know what I mean? Like, I would like to see if it's like she has like a strict reverence to Bam, or if it's like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm chasing exactly where my survival is, and like, but it's like more than that, where it's just like, I hope they don't just leave it at like, okay, I gave up the $1,000,000. Here I am with the guys and the girls, and like we're gonna go out and like have adventures together, and then like we just kind of see her as a background character, and like everything's cool. Because like she did try and like Harley Quinn everyone and blow everyone up at some point. Like she did. It wasn't like Prince, I would say, right? And it kind of reminds me of that scenario where like Prince being inculcated into the group after a little made more sense because he was just kind of a really spoiled, arrogant kid, and he was totally a dick, but he didn't do anything where it was like borderline terroristic, threatening level crap. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, you could see the point, but like this girl has shown that she is like ready to just do some evil deeds, you know, in order to serve whatever end that is. So I guess I would just like to see what end that is, like really have a solidified answer on what end that is. I hope it's not just like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. You know what I mean? Like come along and be here. Cause then to me, I'm like, why? But I don't know. That's my personal opinion. So anyway, moving on, we have the drip god himself. And I forgot his name and my phone won't load. So what is his name again?
His name is Po Badoo.
Po Badoo
Gustang.
Po Badoo Gustang. So let's talk about him real quick. Isaiah had a good line where you were like, who is this guy that he literally just stopped the plot?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, I think that was a good way of putting it. You know, so what do we think?
I think that, so obviously, you know, we learned that he's the head of the, you know, the Pope, the Badoo family, which is one of the 10 great families. And so that made sense to me off the rip, right? Because my qualm here, or not qualm, because when I said it, it wasn't to be like, I have a problem with this guy showing up or doing what he did. But again, like the you know, if we're talking about the workshop arc, right? Like getting the Thorn, Bam getting back together with his old teammates, and like Fug getting the, like all of these conflicts, essentially it boiled down to like Bam's team versus like, you know, I forget, Madarako, right? Was the other guy in the suit? Yeah. Boiled down to like him and like Cassino and like all of those people basically trying to pull one over on Fug and Bam and everybody else. And so it was just crazy to me that like the entire workshop arc essentially built up to like all of these different conflicts and fights happening. And like right when it looked like Bam's group was like going to be axed, this man literally came in and was like, no, just stop. And if you don't stop, like I'm shutting this whole thing down. So like that screams like, I've got a big dick and I've got a lot of money and power and like I'm not afraid to use it. So I was like, because we haven't really, the only person we've seen with this much influence is Urek, and I would even argue that Urek doesn't have so much of this influence in the sense that of the same kind of like a head of the great family, because Urek's just too strong for anybody to really tell him to do anything different or to do anything he doesn't want to do. But this guy actually plays the game, right? Urek is so strong, he can sort of step out and be like, you know what? I'm not even fucking with this game. Like, I'm kind of over this shit. This guy is the opposite, where I feel like he's at Urek's league, maybe not in terms of power, but in terms of like what he can say and how many people can't tell him otherwise. But it's the flip. It's because he plays the game and he knows exactly where he stands and he knows how to manipulate everybody that is under him. And so it was just, we've never seen a character, you know, we've never seen anybody from, well, we have, I was going to say, we've never seen anybody from the 10 great families. Yeon is technically from one of the families. We've never seen anybody with this much pull and who's not afraid to use it, right? And so I was just like, okay, like, you know, big ball players in the game now. And it's like, I'm curious to see what because so obviously him calling off like their assault, right, on Bam and the Thorn does directly, like, or did rather directly help Bam and his team, because it meant they all got to get out probably alive, because who knows, somebody would have probably died. But I don't think, you know, I guess somewhat obviously, that's not his goal, right? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this guy probably doesn't give two actual shits about Bam or his friends or anybody, but that there's a larger overarching thing where it's like, all right, don't worry about the Thorn now. Like, that's not, like, either the plan has shifted or, like, we have another way to get it, or, you know, whatever. But whatever it is, it was just interesting. It was, well, interesting, and it was funny, quite frankly, to see this man be like, again, this workshop arc that we've been building up to and fighting over and people have been about to die over. He was like, and we're done. I call it off. And it's like, what do you mean call it off? Like, to be like, you guys were close. If they had two rankers on Bam in the squad and they were all kind of exhausted, like, you might have got the Thorn if you kept going. So it was, I'm like, what is this guy's pull here? What's the game?
Well, I just want to start out by saying, if you enter the Tower of Drip and you're wearing a white fit, you already know that you're going to be a badass. So that is just A. B, I actually contrast your opinion, and I'm going to throw a curveball out there, because what I believe is happening is that obviously he knows, he calls that Madrano guy, he calls him Catfish or whatever, so they obviously have history, and yes, he he smokes their cigarettes, or he's like, oh, only the premium of people can have them or whatever. So obviously there's like a mutual transaction there. Well, I predict might happen, and it's probably completely wrong, but it's interesting, and I want to throw it out there. I think that the catfish people or in that whole like trade organization, he knows what they're about. And at the end of the day, he was probably thinking along the mindset of, I don't want them to have access with the Thorn. Almost like one of those mindsets where he's like, I'm up here, these people are down here. Why should they, like, these people don't deserve to have the power of the Thorn and really like fuck over Bam and his friends and have the like control of this power, when he is in the mindset more where it's like, oh, I can maybe like facilitate it in a way, or like I know I can pull the stops on this right now. Bam's team will get on their merry way. These people won't have this power because obviously it kind of seemed like they had some beef, him and that catfish guy.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm not going to let him have all the power. However, him being a rich motherfucker is like, you know what? I think this is interesting, though, what's going on. Like, obviously, he has an affiliation with Jahad. He's one of the 10 great families. Like, I don't think he's out there going, I want the whole tower to be thrown up on its head. However, I feel it's almost like a heat-on thing where it's like, it's interesting how, like, someone with this much power can cause like this much turbulation underneath, you know, because obviously he thinks of people being below him. Whereas like, it's interesting how all of this can actually occur and how many problems ensue. I wonder what happens if we like maybe run it out for a little bit longer and just like kind of see what happens for shits and giggles. I feel like he definitely has a mindset where he'd be okay with that. And honestly, just like not help them, but more or less just be like sitting on the sidelines, like just watching, but not necessarily want his colleagues or people around him to have access or control of that power, because obviously he wouldn't want that for his own benefit. So that's my thought.
So would you say
forward.
that ultimately? Well, so would you say ultimately that he's kind of in the mindset then of like he doesn't really want anybody to get it, and he sort of enjoys seeing these people beneath him squabble over trying to get it?
Yeah, I think it's along that, and he's okay with Bam having that power, and he kind of wants to see like what their group of people or team comes up to, and like really like what relevancy they comes up to in the future, opposed to, you know, this other guy, Madron or whatever, having this power and using it on his own volition. I think that he very well is just like, I don't want him to have this power, but let me see what they could do in a couple
all
of
we
years.
really know is that obviously because of his influence, he's a very important person in the world and a very important character in the story. I'm curious to see what, again, like just what's going on in his brain, because
that's the thing. Like, why would he stop it otherwise? Like, it's no skin off his shoulders if this Madrano guy did get the Thorn and had this power. Like, you know, that's the thing. Like, that,
well, because the thing with the Thorn for me is that like only certain people can even use the weapon. So even if they got it, they wouldn't be able to use it. And so then what's stopping him from just axing all those people and taking it from them?
Well, that I mean, that was the whole thing with the melting Bam inside, and you know, getting that power and doing whatever with it.
Right, that was to make it so that anybody could use the Thorn.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying is, by the time he comes in to stop all them, that didn't happen. Like, Bam was still a whole person, meaning that the Thorn is only accessible by Bam and, you know, I'm assuming we're just, any other irregular. So what I'm saying is, it's interesting that he stopped the conflict there instead of waiting for them to probably axe off at least all of them or enough of them to where they would get the Thorn, bring it back to Morocco, and then just take it from Morocco.
Well, that's where I think he doesn't like really care about the power. Like, that's why, like, because when he stopped it, they were mid-pouring that shit down the mountain or the inside. Like, that's when he told them to stop, when they were pouring it. So, like, I don't think that he wanted them to get that far, for the fact that he almost wanted Bam and his team to survive and do their own thing.
Do you think that he didn't even know that they were, because they were out of the mountain by the time this guy comes, by the time he comes in to stop, they're about to flee, right? And then the ranker comes in to stop them. Do you think he didn't know that, though? Like, he thought they were still in the mountain about to get that shit poured on them, and so that's why he was like...
No, I don't think so.
I do.
I think this guy... I think, personally, mine's definitely more surface level. It's not like some grand prediction. But being that this guy is a leader of the 10 Great Families, which is the most powerful and influential character we have seen on panel so far, that it would be underestimating that he... Personally, for me, that he didn't know. I think he literally knows everything that's going on right now, like with the ominous thing where he's like talking to the person on the radio and all that kind of stuff. I think it's like more of like a grand chess game type thing. And like he's cool with that for now. And there's a reason that he's telling them to stop. Like that it's, I don't know. It's like all part of some bigger thing. I guess my point is I don't personally think that he's out of the loop on like the things that happened below him during that test and with the teams and with the Thorn. Is
I
my
get very
opinion.
like How Are You vibes from this guy early on, where I'm like, I just don't really know like what your goal, you know, like what
That's
your
the
game,
thing.
what game you're
Yeah.
playing here, you know? I mean, and like we got literally his name and his position, so it's not like we have a whole lot to dissect, but like, you know, just off of expectations, it's like I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I don't have enough even to.
And
to
it
really,
says is the real Jahad's prince as well. On the
that I
title
think
here.
is a
So-
personal, not personal. That I think is a red herring. It's just supposed to imply that he believes that he's either one of the runner-ups or he believes he's the real Prince of Jahad.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty set and sold on who the real Prince of Jahad is, and it's not this nigga.
Fair enough. Oh man. All right. Anyway, moving on. We have our meeting between Jinsung and Karaka after this whole debacle goes down. So this was funny because we really got to see Jinsung's powers on display for a second because he just, you know, we have the ominous castle, you know, like the Darth Vader castle on that lava planet type thing where it's like the 97th floor, you know,
Yeah,
lightning's
yeah.
going by. It's like a red sky.
Dracula's castle.
Yeah, literally.
Bro, is a blue sky and a flower gonna kill you? Like, oh, I
Yeah,
doesn't need to be
yeah.
next to lava in the most menacing
Yeah.
place
Well,
possible.
obviously it doesn't
Like,
fit his aesthetic.
I mean,
here.
yeah, I know. But still,
He's got the yellow eyes and the fucking
It's like,
mask.
oh,
Castle.
it's like, oh, look at his castle in a field full of daisies, and look at the little like cow walking in the field. Like, oh my god, that'd be
Yeah,
hilarious.
I'm sure that's his other estate. But so anyway, he's just chilling on his throne because why not? He's Karaka, and Jinsung rolls up, literally just rolls up, walks up, and he's like, "Yo, where's your boss at?" And they're like, "Bruh," and he just mollywops these two like gigantor dudes, which you could only assume would be going through hell and high water to try and defeat for like the folks on, you know, X floor that we are now.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like those things were
Right,
clearly
yeah,
no
yeah,
joke.
yeah.
And he just flattens that thing and then just blasts the door open like with ease. Walks in and he's like, "Yo, what's good?" You know, he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"What are you doing?"
We gotta
You know,
talk.
Yeah, he's like, "What are you doing, dude?" Croc is like, I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah,
That's
he
what I'm
really
doing."
came out the game like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, and it's like, oh, really? That's the game we're playing here, bro?
Yeah, and you know, he's like, "Listen, dude." Karaka's like, "Listen, bro, we got our own things going on. You clearly have some like soft spot for him. I'm really not apologizing for what I did."
I just pictured him like pulling up a picture of like everything that happened in the island. And he's like, "This was you? You had doing this?" And he's like, "A lot of things happened in the tower, bro. I can't be held responsible for all of them." And it's like, "Oh, all right,
What's
we'll
happening?
play
I
this
was
game."
sitting on
Stays in
this
the tower.
throne, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, he's like, "Yeah, this is how I'm doing it, and I kind of don't agree with what you're doing." Jinsung's like, "All right, that's cool, but don't do it again." Because I don't know if you forgot, Slayer or not, I could still beat your ass from here to Timbuktu. So, like, you might want to watch out because you're going against the grain here, and I'm not appreciating it. Plus, Bam's kind of my boy now, although I haven't admitted to anyone. It's clearly obvious. But, like, you should know that I know that you know, and you should stop messing with me, okay?
Literally.
So, that was their meeting in a nutshell.
Pretty much.
And so, you know, Jinsung walks away, and then it was interesting because Karaka is in contact with the deep sea fish or the underground fish or whatever the hell, which is Han Sung.
administrator.
Yeah, that's a big deal because
Yeah.
Han Sung is the one that's like, "Yo, you know, you should do this thing or like report back to me." And it's like, all right, so really, how strong is Han Sung?
Yeah.
And
Where
how
does
much
he
influence
stack?
does this
Where
guy
he-
have?
Well, don't
It's
forget,
a
if you remember
lot.
from the beginning, they offered him a job way higher in the tower, and he was
Yeah.
like, "Nah, B, I'm staying down here." So like, he is up there. He
Yeah,
is up there.
and it's interesting because I think one that can be seen as a way of like, all right, I'm gonna operate down here as a way of being like, if we ever get hit with an irregular or somebody, like I will be first point of contact. I will probably be the first one that meets them, and I'll be able to sort of guide,
Manipulate the whole.
yeah, exactly
Yeah,
where they
which
go.
is exactly what he
which
did.
is exactly what he does. Yeah, it's interesting also to me that Karaka has a ring of Jahad because, from my knowledge, if you are not a member of Jahad's family, and you didn't kill a nigga from Jahad's family and take the ring off their dead hand, you shouldn't have one of those rings.
Yeah.
So one of those
Because
two things
he is the
happened.
Prince
Does,
of Jahad.
does Han Sung have one of those rings
He
too?
does not. I don't think so.
doesn't?
No,
I could've
he has a
swore-
ring. I don't
could've
think it's a
swore he
ring
had
of
the
Jahad.
ring, but I guess I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't know.
Regardless, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's
What's
also
going on?
cool? The
that?
fact that he is still rocking with the lollipop instead of cigarettes. I just was like really
Yeah.
staring at this panel.
Well, so
from,
I
from,
think-
well, from Wangnam, like that's important.
Yeah, no, it is. That's a good thing you brought because I think, again, even in this conversation here, where we see Jinsung sort of come in and be like, "Look, I don't know what this like petty nonsense is that you got going on with Bam and stuff, but like, you're stepping on a lot of niggas' toes. Like, relax, you know, and you might want to start to correct yourself because you come walking into our fort with this nonsense, and like, I will flatten you. But it's important. One of the last moments or lines he says is he's like, oh, by the way, Bam's growth is actually moving at a much faster rate than I think even you can imagine, and I'd be careful because when the next time you see him, like, it might be your head he's coming for.
Yeah.
That Jinsung, who was initially, when we met him, one of the sole proprietors of like, Bam, fuck these friends and all this lollygally shit you got going on. Like, we're fucked though. Like, you got to stay with fuck. That now, amidst what's happened, his tone has changed, right? And he's not only has he been like, oh, well, you better watch out for Bam because I think he's packing a lot more than he leads on. But that he even says to Karaka, who knows, man? Maybe one day Bam will come back to fuck. That he's essentially now left the decision up to Bam, to where before he wasn't even willing to risk the chance. He was like, no, I can't leave this to this kid because he's clearly still too young or naive and unqualified and doesn't know what he's doing now. And I think, again, in the sake of metaphors, this man used to be smoking nothing but cigarettes, and now that he's met Bam and Wangnan and all of Bam's friends, he's had this change of heart, again, much like I think people like Howard Ryun and even... I'm trying to think. I can't think of the other character's name right now. But like these characters who meet Bam, who are from fuck, right? And they're like, all right, Bam, like, you're part of the squad though. Like, we need you to play this role. But it's only after meeting Bam's friends, the thing that Bam holds most precious to him, and seeing them all interact with him, that they're like, you know what? Maybe there is something to like this kid doing things his way. Yeah. So I think that's actually a interesting metaphor for that, where it's like he's literally turned from sour to sweet, sort of, and he's like, all right, I think I'm a ride with Bam.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, so then let's talk about what everyone was waiting for us to talk about, the fights and all that. It's irrelevant, right? Because what we really want to talk about is the argument here. Who does Bam get shipped with? Who does Bam get shipped with, right? And we had some strong inclination towards Endorsi on this one. I know we have some different stands in here of some different women, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, belonging with Bam. We might have difference of opinion on that.
No, Yuri's mine, dude. Bam can have Endorsi all he wants.
Oh yeah, Bam can't end up with Yuri because
no.
That's not
sure. But anyway, so we have a kind of a little bit of a spark of jealousy going back and forth too between two pretty major characters in Endorsi and Yeon. And I don't know who we rooting for here.
It's not even a question.
What's the answer?
Whatever you're about to give, which I already know. I'm reading your mind.
See, this is what he's doing to like just agree with you.
No. It's Endorsi, 100%.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's obvious.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Like, because I don't even need to say it.
I just wanted to hear you say it.
I was gonna, my bucket. So here's my thing. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really know if I'm solidified on who Bam should end up with yet. But as of right now, as of where we stand and all the cards that we have in front of us, I feel like Endorsi is a pretty strong bet. Yeah. One, because I personally kind of really ship Yeon with Wangnan. I know that's not a popular one, or at least with Ian. But I feel like, because I don't know, there's something about Endorsi and Bam. We brought this up during stream where like they kind of weirdly work, because Endorsi is like a very bold, very upfront, like even brute kind of girl, who's, as we see in this date, clearly not afraid to just grab the fucking wheel and just, start driving at 120 miles per hour. But Bam is not your regular guy, right? He's almost a great pairing with her because he doesn't have that, I guess, like what you would call like the typical, I'll call it like ego or like self understanding that like most people would have, where it's like, well, wait a minute, you can't treat me like this. Where he's like, oh, okay, whatever. Like to him, he's just kind of like, yeah, we'll hang out. It's cool. Like he doesn't really like get annoyed, I guess, or sweat all the little things or the ways that she can get. And I think it leans into this idea of like Bam could probably, if anything, tolerate her the most. Because I think anybody, first off, Endorsi clearly holds herself in a very high scale. So it's not really a matter of like, is Endorsi good enough for you? In her mind, it's like, are you good enough for her? I think most people would be like, wow, that's high maintenance. Like, fuck that. I'm not, get that shit out of my face with a 10-foot pole. But like, again, Bam, he doesn't have like those concerns and like, sort of like self-perceptions. Like it's just not there, right? She literally kind of runs this date where so to speak, runs this date, right? Where she's like, all right, we're doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And he's like, okay, cool. And she's like, all right, and I'm going to spend all your money later. Cool. I wasn't going to use it anyway. Like he's just so chill that like, actually, I feel like it melds well with someone like Endorsi. Because if I feel like if she was with somebody any more abrasive, they would just like attack each other all the time, and it wouldn't like nothing would happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
All right, Gavin, what do
She
you think?
waited 7 years for this man to go on a date, brings him on set date, and gives him a kiss on the cheek. And you're telling me they ain't gonna get married, dude? I already see.
Actually, our headcanon is that she whispered the word kiss because
Oh,
that's
that's
20 times
she
more
whispered
hilarious.
the word. All right.
She went, kiss.
Either way, you know my boy Bam's leg was fucking trembling. The hairs were
That's
raising.
what I'm saying, bro. He
and,
got that
you
little,
know,
that
you know,
quick
I don't know if he
ASMR from
was.
her.
I don't know if he was, and that's
No,
what
he
makes
it was
me
a joke.
that's what makes. Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm
No,
just
no,
saying.
no, it was a
I
joke.
thought you were saying like Bam's
No.
reciprocating. I think that is my biggest thing right now. Is that I feel like Endorsi Bam ship, although set up to make you believe that this is definitely the way it has to go, we don't know where Bam's at with it, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you know
no.
what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah.
And I think that's the important thing is that Endorsi is just so damn abrasive and upfront that it's like, it seems like, oh, okay, it's already a done deal. You know what I mean? She chose Bam, so that's it, done. And so number one, I mean, in terms of who we want and who realistically can be it, I don't even realistically, she's a princess of Jahad. So unless they topple Jahad or something along those lines, until they do, you know what I mean? Like it can't actually be a thing. So there is that. So I'm assuming if they do get together, it's like, oh, we topple Jahad and then we do this thing and it's like,
Well,
I think
guess
she's already
you're
so
together.
far in the meat stick that like Jahad ain't gonna be very Jahad ain't very happy with her to begin with. Like whether she marries him or not, I think is irrelevant because either way, she is on a team with a Fug member. Like I don't think he's
Wait,
all
first
happy
off,
with this.
I just got to, what is the meat stick? What does that
Bam's
mean?
meat stick because she about to get it in the future, dude. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
I don't
fair
know.
enough.
I just said that's the first thing out of my mind.
I definitely think there is a line of logic to be trot as to where like if she really does care about Bam, she's not gonna wait for like some tower ruling to subside, and she might be like, well, fuck
That makes
this.
sense.
But yeah, I do think it's important to note that like regardless who clearly, because Endorsi is obviously not the only one
Oh yeah.
that has eyes for Bam. My man Bam kind of like really just figured out who he is. I mean, not entirely.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about it a little later. Goes through a little bit of like another big character moment for himself at the end of this chapter. And so yeah, I don't really know. I mean, at the very least, clearly in this date, relationships are not, at least in the romantic sense, are not on his mind, except for with Khun, because it's obviously.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say that, and that's her biggest fight is with Khun because
Well,
I don't know. It's a big
I
tower
would say
climb.
the other thing too with her that kind of makes me think that where we are now, that this might not be just like the ship has sailed type thing, where it's like, okay, it's like this is it. You know what I mean? Like this is my hat, my name's in the hat for
Oh,
this.
it's definitely not. No.
I'm not there yet. I don't know if I would think this would be the best match either yet, because I think there's a point where Endorsi doesn't even know what she wants at the end of the day, and like I think that's something to be very talked about here.
They'll
Is
find
that
out together.
is that, but again, like Bam, he doesn't know. He's like, whatever, I'm just having fun with my friends, whatever. Date? What's a date? What's a movie? That was a big screen, whatever. Like, she's just kind of taking him along. But then there's even a point where she's with him and she's like, do I even like him? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, where
yeah,
she's
yeah.
there and she's like, I don't even know, like, what is it that attracted to him in the
Yeah.
first place? And there's just a lot more to be said, and I don't think that this solidifies it at all. And I'd also like to say that she is at a huge advantage in the sense that she has been around longer, but I do think that in terms of compatibility and matching, I actually don't know. I think there's an argument to be made for Yeon, actually, in terms of better compatibility for Bam, and here's my reasoning. That I do believe that there is, I think Endorsi at the end of the day, recognizes Bam for his potential, for his ability to sway, all that kind of stuff. And we were saying before where it's like, okay, it makes sense because, she's really abrasive and Bam is like super laid back. So it's like, okay, I can do anything, like she's like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And Bam's like, okay, whatever. I'm just like kind of happy to be here. Like that bird looked nice. You know what I mean? Like whatever, just enjoying life. But I would also, think that there is on the darker side of it, Endorsi can simply just get bored of that as well. She seems to be someone who definitely is like on to whatever the next thing is, like whatever she wants to do. And if Bam isn't like stimulating enough in that relationship, I could see her not, you know what I mean? Like almost wanting that as like a passing fling and not wanting like something where it's like, okay, like this is like, I want to be with you for the rest of my life. I want to do all these things. You know what I mean? Like solely with you. I love you. I don't know. I think Yeon, although is way more shy, and again is a disadvantage because she doesn't get as much screen time per se, so it's like harder to see as compared to Endorsi because they're really kind of like pushing that at the moment. But I think so in terms of compatibility, I can see a world where Bam and Yeon might be a good match in that sense too, because like Yeon understands like the more sensitive side and like that sort of that growth in there, whereas Endorsi seems like she's like super. I don't know. She's
I think
like,
the overarching thing with me, because I get what you're saying, and it's a very good point, that like obviously right now, I don't think anybody's a good match for anybody, because I think everybody's still far too in the column of they don't know who they are or what they want to be with anybody. I guess in my mind, it just makes sense. To me, it makes sense that down the line they could end up, like if they ended up, I'd be like, all right, that makes sense. Like, you know, assuming that this is a moment where they both come sort of full circle with their character arcs. I guess for me, the only reason I don't really see Yeon is because we haven't, and like, sure, maybe you could chalk some of it up to the fact that she gets less screen time, so we just don't know, like, you know, where she's at, I guess. But I don't really think she's made that much more progress character development wise than Endorsi has. I feel like with Endorsi right now, you know, like we said, now that sort of the smoke was cleared and she's had this date, this moment, she's like, wait a minute, what do I actually even want to do this or be here? And with Yeon, at least again from the panels and from the stuff we've seen, all she really knows is that she wants to stick around with Bam because in my mind, she wants to stick around with Bam because she has that moment where she sees how happy Bam is with his friends, and she's like, wow, I like that. I like seeing him smile. I didn't know he could do that. Like, I like seeing him happy, and I want him to be happy more. But I think that feeling is a very easy feeling to confuse with like romantic attraction and affection, and that it might not necessarily be that. And that's where my thing comes in again with I don't think Yeon's developed her character and what she wants enough to be able to distinguish those two things. Yeah. So it might, and plus seeing Endorsi get all like, you know, oh, this is my boyfriend, might also like trickle her, you know, sort of instinctive.
No, I don't know if there's like any camp. I'm just saying I guess I was saying, and number one, and Endorsi's gotten way more character development. I agree with that. She has. I guess at the end of the day, it's just like I know there are a lot of people out there like that probably the second they saw this panel, it's like, it's done, boom, you know what I mean? Fire up the ship,
what's
we're leaving.
To me
you know what I mean?
Is
but
that
it's
like
I don't know if we're there yet.
People who are a lot of our viewers and stuff have obviously finished the series, and that so that there are people out there who still ship Bam and Endorsi despite finishing it. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's what makes me think like maybe there is something to be said for where these two characters end up. Yeah. But I mean, obviously we know for a fact at the very least that Bam's gonna end up with Khun. So really none of this conversation is relevant.
Well, I think another thing I wanted to just add, although her character is very all over the place and she doesn't know what she wants, I think that was a direct call to us as viewers to also remember why she had those feelings in the first place, which was when she was training with Bam one-on-one and had that realization where they literally had like a heart-to-heart and have that understanding with each other. And Bam even shares it and has also agreed where it's like, I know like the loneliness that is inside of you, and has recognized when she didn't. And Bam was the first person that really took her out of that and literally changed the whole philosophical mindset on princes of Jahad aren't allowed to actually date or marry people. Bam in himself, single-handedly, just off of his mindset and how he's going about climbing the tower, is what had changed that mindset from the ground up. So even though now, yes, she sits down and she's like, why did I like him in the first place? 7 years has gone by since she has seen this person. So that spark that was once initially there, obviously it is more diminished until it is relit. When they are then fighting side by side again and that mindset is then reinvigorated, that is when it's going to become a lot more pressing for her and like kind of the jumpstart that she needs. So for me, it's really not a matter of she just like goes like her mind changes every day and she doesn't know what she wants. I feel like deep down she does know what she wants because she had made that decision. It's just like literally seeing this guy for more than 3 days and not going out on a date with him. Like just actually getting back, talking to him, and then those feelings will come back. And then they will continue on.
Oh, sure. I think there's definitely, at the end of the day, there's something to be said for the fact that whether she is just in the stage of being bored and wanting the newest thing, or she just literally, like, it's incredibly hard for somebody that's grown up in the life she's grown up to look at her feelings and be objective and be like, all right, what does that actually mean? And it could even be a thing of she knows she likes Bam, but that scares the fuck out of her, so she's going to deny the fuck out of it. And you know what I mean? Yeah. Very, you know, nothing groundbreaking in terms of storytelling, but it works in characters because it makes sense.
We'll have to see where Bam, obviously, his head lies, like we said in the beginning. I guess I just hope if this is the way it goes, that Endorsi not only wants to be with Bam because it's like, this is what I want, but she's like, I think this is what, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be there for Bam rather than just like I want Bam to be there for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, you know what I mean? Like I'm growing off Bam, I'm doing this, but like what are you doing also to reciprocate that? You know what I mean?
That
Because she's
becomes like a
very
two-way-
abrasive and she could be at times, I would say, selfish as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
You know, and she's definitely made a lot of steps to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
better. But I'm curious
For
where it's
sure.
like Yeon seems to be in the small bits of character development that we have with her seems to be coming more from a place so far of like, what can I do? Like, I want to see Bam smile. You know what I mean? Not like what's Bam going to do for me type thing. But that would be the only argument that I could see.
I'm just saying, Endorsi has kissed Bam, and Khun has technically slept with Bam already. So I'm just saying, if we're counting, tallies here, we all know
That is
where
a
this is
fact.
going to
That is
end.
Paracule.
And who's
Got it.
hottest? Yeah,
Paracule. All right. Anyway, moving on
Paracule.
because
That's what you're getting shipped with.
let's do it, baby. You're jealous. You're not going to be part of the revolution.
No, 'cause I have Khun. That's all I need. We got our own revolution going on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we got me,
Because
Khun,
you're
Bam,
jealous, you're not
dude.
gonna be
Rak
part of
can
the
join in.
revolution.
Khun
Dude,
doesn't
we'll be
even
fine.
know you exist.
Oh, man.
Are you sure? Because he's looking at me right now. He's been this whole
doesn't
day.
even know you
Khun's
exist.
been giving me the eyes, dude, right off of Isaiah's shirt.
Gavin, I don't like the way you're objectifying Khun.
Don't fight over that.
You're objectifying Khun.
Please don't talk about my boyfriend like that.
Have like the next TLC show, reality show, Living with Khun. He's gonna be like Tiger King, where he's like with like 5 husbands and everything. It's gonna be Gavin's like,
man.
I don't like the way Isaiah was looking at him, and really it's like, he's mine.
Oh, man.
Paracule and I are just gonna be like, revolution.
No, you guys won't make it past the 4th floor. You'll be dead.
Great, dude. Be awesome.
Do we have to talk about her?
Yeah, why is your face on the screen?
We do. Let's skip. No, I'm just kidding.
Please.
Yeah. So anyway, this kind of ties into Rachel, obviously, and the other group of Thug members, Apple, Michael, etc. Now meeting up with Cassino and the Traveler. So briefly going over Cassino's thing, where we basically find out that Emily is tricked into believing she's a human and is essentially like she was a successfully melted ignition weapon. And has the power to influence people, right? That's how she got all those people there to try and free her, all that kind of stuff. And so Cassino obviously has ulterior motives here and screws over Huoryang yet again. Which, again, not defending him, but to be fair, he does say, you want to come with me? And Huoryang's like, no, obviously the better decision. And Cassino's like, sure, I'm just going to take your devil spark then. It's like, all right, dick. But so, that was that. And Cassino's just slowly more and more making me hate him as a character. And then, of course, if we wanted a cherry on top, teams up with this bitch. So there's that. I don't know. What do we think? Because Ryun says at the end too, with later panels where it's like, okay, Rachel has the ability to also alter the tower, and like there's this huge air of mystery around this woman as well. And now, like, okay, it seemed like she kind of was in on this plan, almost as if she was in charge of communicating with Cassino in order to get said Emily thing, Vile as well. It seemed like there's way more to her character than was being led on. So I don't know.
I think when we spoke to Dr. Bonehead in our recent collab episode, we talked briefly about like Rachel and like what we all thought of her character. And after Gavin and I and you all got done spitting, we talked actually about her character. And I think what interests me about this character is the fact that she's not like in charge of any of these operations here, or that she's not running this show, or that she's not telling people to do anything, is that she's quite literally being strung along by different people and is climbing the tower in the sense that, yes, she's physically going up floor to floor to floor. But he brought up a good point in that, like, if you compare somebody like Wang Nan to somebody like Rachel, like, yeah, Rachel's climbing the tower, but she has nobody to rely on. She can't trust any of those people she can't put her life in their hands or trust them that when the chips are down and her back's against the wall, that they would honestly come to her aid because of her.
Sure.
And that's her own character's fault, right? It's because she's the kind of person who, when the going gets tough, she dips the fuck out, or she stabs some nigga's legs or whatever and just bails, because that's all she knows. All she knows how to do, and the only way I believe that she survived this tower and gotten up this far is by doing that, is by grabbing somebody's tailcoat and riding for however long that they will let her ride, and then when they outlive their usefulness, she nixes them and crawls into some gutter and climbs her way up somebody else.
Like, for all the terrible things she is, and again, this isn't a good trait, but if I had to give her one thing, she has pretty incredible resourcefulness in being able to like
sure.
shimmy her way and finagle her way into these situations she has no business being a part of.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn impressive because for somebody who has like literally zero power to be like, let me just latch on to what like this crew's doing, and she's like catapulting. You know what I mean? Like,
it makes her such a great antagonist to our heroes in this story, because our heroes again are constantly fighting with the ideology of like, does it matter if I climb this tower if I lose everybody that I'm climbing with in the process? And, you know, so to have somebody who's like, I don't give a single fuck about how many people I have to step over as long as I get to the top, right? She's the literal opposite of that theme, of that ideology. So I think that Cassino is going to be a little bit misconstrued. And to be honest, I don't really know if he's, because I feel like I said this about Beta, and then Beta did have a change of heart. So, like, I don't know. I don't want to say Cassino's too far gone yet. Perhaps there's some method through, interacting with Hor Yang and his friends and or somebody, whatever, he has a change of heart. Could happen. But I think this being around these people is going to do nothing but corrupt him even more, right? And askew his mind as far as it's already been askewed. And I think that hopefully, at least from the panels we read, Traveler seems to be getting, I don't know if it's just a wince, just a feeling, just a vibe, but he seems to be like, I don't know, but maybe it's the fact that all these niggas are in hoods and like demanding his shit that like, I don't really fuck with what's going on here. And it's like, hopefully he has a perspective shift where he's like, you know what? I don't really know what you guys are doing and I don't fuck with it. But obviously I think like it's just interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where Rachel and Bam are when they meet, right? Because of all the things that they will have gone through to get to wherever they are, right? And so like let's just say they end up meeting somewhere on like the 95th floor, right? It's like all the things that Rachel had to do to get to the 95th floor versus all the things that Bam had to do. I think like this duality between them, right, is like such a strong focal point, obviously, for this story, because it's like as many people as we see Bam sort of pull to his side and be like, no, there is a better way to do this. There is hope in like being and aligning with other people and like wanting to, build a team. You have people like Rachel who are on the opposite side, who are like just use them until their worthfulness is done and then drop them to the curb,
Yeah. At least the Traveler seems to know like there's something fishy just by looking at her right off the rip. So that's reassuring. Briefly talking here about Wang Nan's dream.
I was fucking right. Just saying it.
Yeah, that like he's definitely got something going on, and how Reflejo is in there, and he's like, yeah, you can't because you're, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then he wakes up, and it's all like, I'm saying what are you?
You're gonna have to have Wang Nan on panel, like, biologically prove to me that he's not the Prince of Jahad for you to convince me that he's not the Prince of Jahad, because this just boiled in to all of my theories that I've had about Wang Nan in the past, couple weeks. And it's like, it just fucking clicks. It just makes way too much sense. And like, sure, you could argue that it's like, oh, well, it's a red herring. It's like designed to make you, no, fuck that noise though, because I was right. I know I'm right. It's the same thing with the Traveler and Rachel. I just know. It's in my I just know. That nigga right there, it's the Prince of Jahad.
Yeah, there's no arguing it at this point.
Facts,
like,
right.
It's been
done deal.
This solidified it.
But real quick, it is dope that like they're showing this, because one, it's nice to sort of allude to those moments in story without being like, yeah, it's you, name tag, and that it does explain, although not directly or literally, that like there's some truthfulness to the fact that there is some latent ability or power, or even if it's just his blood in him that like lets him survive.
For sure. All right, so then the last thing we want to talk about are our thoughts on the workshop arc in general and Bam's new haircut. So what do we think? Thoughts on the workshop battle? Thoughts on this haircut? What's going on?
Well, with the haircut thing, I think it's cool. I kind of would like it if he melded it and it was just longer hair, but not as long as the Viol thing. But I think in terms of like Bam's character, it absolutely like makes sense, and it's kind of necessary, because I think this is the first time I brought this up briefly in the chapters when Rak and like Endorsi and crew first meet Bam in the apartment or whatever. This is the first time that was the first time that like Bam got to really like sort of reconnect with his old self via his friends and stuff. But like this is like the other flip side of that now, where like Bam gets to be Bam again, right? He doesn't have to be. Jewel Viola Grace is effectively dead, right? He can be the Bam that knows and can acknowledge and more importantly be there for his friends, and he doesn't have to live under this facade or under the thumb of Fug anymore. So I think physically showing that, because I mean that's what I think more so than anything, the sort of his look as Jewel Viola Grace was, right? The man literally looked like he had been through hell and back, right? And constantly wore this sort of veil and air of like I'm 3 seconds away from giving up on life, and so like seeing this, it's like kind of like corny, right? But it's like he literally, the skies look clear, you know what I mean? He is now Bam again, and he can sort of be and feel like Bam again, and so I think for his character, this is really actually like it's really cool. It's a really cool again, like in terms of like metaphors and stuff, to see that the physical change when his character has changed.
Yeah, I agree. The haircut's necessary, kind of like the lollipop cigarette comparison that you were saying before. It kind of has to be a number two from a fighting standpoint. Having all that hair, you know what I mean? Like always in the way, like you could barely even see what you're doing half the time. Like true. I don't know if any of you have ever had really long hair and then have gotten into a fight. It's not good. No. Like I'm just saying, like you're way better off having short hair most of the time, unless you're trying to intimidate them. And let's be honest, Bam, in terms of like physical stature, is really not all that much in terms of intimidation.
That's true.
So I don't think he needs the hair. Is all I'm saying. I think it changes his whole aesthetic now. I think the short hair again, kind of again symbolizing with like his old crew and all that. Like it shows this like air of positivity, you know what I mean, to it, where it's like the long hair along with the outfits that he wore and all that kind of stuff sometimes kind of went with that. But I can see why people like the long hair. You know, it was
personally,
cool. It was a cool
I would
look.
kind of like it if it was just like, if it was longer than that, but not as long as like
Fair
the Jewel
enough.
Viola thing.
I don't know. What do you think of the haircut, Gavin?
I fuck with long hair, dude. I mean,
like
again, metaphorically, you get it. No more Jewel Viola Grace. I'm a Bam. Blah, 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 blah. I like to think of it as he didn't cut his hair to show as like a physical representation of time that passed since he's seen his old crew, because he hasn't gotten a haircut since he's seen anybody. So the length that it's at is because that is the duration of time that has passed since he has seen them. And like I think that's cool and shit, but like his drip dude just went down 4 pegs. Not even gonna lie, and I know y'all agree with me, but
literally just
it
like,
still is
cute.
cute.
I think the metaphor is super important. Gavin's like, all right, but like fuck that shit though. He had a real drip beaver thing going, and now it's gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not about that. Like I gotta change my hair because I'm not like, bro, your hair looked fucking dope. And again, like,
God damn it,
it's all good. It's all good. You could have kept it like to there, like shoulder length. You could have done some cool shit, like maybe I don't know, dude. You could have done so many dope stuff with that hair.
I would say
and
like
you just went and chopped it.
I
I
don't
hope
know.
he donated that shit,
I would
because if he
say,
didn't,
like,
have beat his ass.
I don't think that's on his
miles
mind.
of hair. He
I don't
better
know,
have
man.
donated
I would
it.
say from like a drawing perspective, in terms strictly of the manhwa, yeah, they made the hair have this really cool aesthetic.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of it in like terms of real life and like
Well, you're thinking about it wrong, because this is a
apparently-
manhwa.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But I can't get my head out of this mode where it's just like, dude, like I couldn't actually picture like if
Rak is a crocodile. Do you actually picture a physical crocodile running through? Like it's a cartoon, bro.
not my point, Gavin.
Completely
Okay.
valid one though.
No.
What do you mean no? Oh, it's not like
Listen,
real life with
I-
all of that hair and the fighting.
Let
No,
me
Are
go.
we gonna go off on the haircut thing?
We're
Is that
gonna go
what
off
we're
on the
okay?
haircut
Yeah,
thing.
all right,
Ian's gonna
just
die
making
on this
sure.
stand. He's gonna go on how hyper realistic it would be.
You shot
Come
the
on.
first shot.
Go.
I'm just trying to explain my point in saying.
And I'm saying it's invalid. It's a manhwa.
So, do you see what I'm dealing with? Do you see
What
what I'm
do you
dealing
know?
with here?
It's
Do you see what I'm
invalid.
doing?
It's invalid.
All I'm saying, okay, is that the argument that's pervaded a lot of times would drive me nuts, where it's like, oh, bro, that'd be like if you're watching like, I don't know, like fucking Independence Day with Will Smith, right? And it's like, Will Smith all of a sudden is able to run 50 miles an hour to go save who he loves. And I call out that I'm like, all right, well, that's kind of BS because human beings can't really clock a speed of 50. And then someone comes in and it's like, bro, there's aliens. You know what? You're really going to bitch about that? Like, blah, blah, blah. I hate it when people use that argument because it's like, dude, just because there is a wild understanding of like, there's fantasy elements, there's like all this kind of stuff. That doesn't mean like there are parameters that you set within your world that I'm saying, make it so you kind of have to fit within that box. So like, I even think we said this in a discussion once, or I did, where it was like something that's interesting about Tower of God is that it has the liberty to do so much cool stuff and incorporate so many things. And they do well at explaining why something makes sense in the current moment, right? Because if they did a whole, like, I'm just going to insert this thing, then it's like, okay. And like, even as even with as much free reign as they have, they still are boxed within the rules that they've established for themselves, is my point. So I'm saying relating this to real life, which again, I was saying I wasn't looking at it in terms of the manhwa, which again could be the wrong frame of thought. I am just stating an opinion. Using that frame of reference for the physics of hair and how it works, which I would assume are somewhat similar within said mana in terms of how hair works. I thought that if I'm relating it to that long hair isn't all it's chalked up to be. And regardless if there's crocodile people in the manhwa or not, that should not change or just give an excuse for the physics of hair to be whatever the hell you want them to be. But that's my only argument.
A pure representation. So, everything you said, I think it's completely irrelevant with the whole argument before. I just think that's stupid because... Well, no, I really think that it doesn't, because the whole point of this is fantasy. It's like... And another thing is with the whole hair physics, if it was that much of a problem, hate to tell you, he would have cut that shit a long time ago if it actually was a hindrance to his fighting. A, that shit would have been dealt with. B, again, the whole point isn't the fact that, obviously there is a frame of reference where things physically need to make sense, and they have the rules. One, we're talking about hair, which again is out the window. And two, again, like how you said before with the argument, how you don't like it when... some random thing is explained because of XYZ happens and you're in this world. But, quite literally, that is the cop-out for a lot of these shows and a lot of these works in particular, is that the fantasy element is supposed to take away from the logistic reality behind it. That is the cop-out. And especially in this case, with the hair that has been there for this entire time, quite literally, if it had real-life physics, it would have never been that way to begin with. 100%. Okay. This is Tower of God. So, it doesn't matter.
Gavin doesn't like the haircut.
I like the haircut. I think it looked doper with the hair that he had.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Which in a different phrasing means you don't like the current haircut if you like the old one better,
I prefer the old one, but it doesn't mean I don't like this one. I do like it.
Fair enough. Gavin prefers the older haircut.
Correct.
I like the haircut, and I believe you do too.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay, let's actually put a period right there because it's kind of nuts that we went that hard on Bam's haircut of all things.
I'm just saying.
We didn't even get to talking about the arc as a whole, which is where I kind of assumed niggas were going to go off.
Fuck the arc, apparently.
Dude, why do you need arcs when you have hair?
I don't know. Listen, whatever.
The arc was shit is what we're trying to say. No, we're kidding. I'm kidding.
I thought the arc was great. I thought it was the best arc so far. My personal opinion. But
calm down, bitch. I'm just fucking with you. Jeez.
Oh my god. Anyway, I thought the arc was good. My personal opinion, and I am excited to see where we go from here. I like how we incorporated all the old gang again, which was really cool. We had huge character development. This was one of the bigger arcs that we've had, so obviously we have more time to flesh that out. Really cool upgrades were made, not just in the psychological character development of people, but the actual physical aspect of it and the weapons and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool to see this whole, political dealings with the 38 sects of Fug and what their motivations are, and then Fug as a whole. And it's we got so much answered in this arc, so much answered, and I couldn't be more appreciative of that moving forward. So I'm not totally out of the loop on what's going on. So I liked it a lot, and it really gets me excited because I feel like this is where season 2 actually starts now. It's almost again, kind of like the season 1 thing, where it's end of season 1, this is where it really starts. But now it's this is where it really starts. You keep on getting that, but it's you're still loving the journey as you go through. If I had one qualm, because I'm going to throw it out there, if I, for anyone, because I could see this argument. I was thinking about it as I was saying what I was saying. One thing that kind of stunk, and obviously this just is implied inherently with the realization that you're just introducing way more characters, or not necessarily introducing, but having them all share a story. Yeah. That you obviously have to limit the amount of panels that certain characters can get, comparatively speaking. So I will say there is a part of me that misses when we got to flesh out the new characters from season 2, such as your Arc Raptors, your Missangs, your Prince, all those kind of people, your Horyangs and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of stinks because a lot of those characters, even Yeon and all the they have little moments, but like a lot of times they get like they kind of get trounced by the OG gang. You know what I mean? Which was awesome. Don't get me wrong. Like when I see Rak bust on panel and whip a spear, like Khun up to his schemes again, and like Wang Nan definitely got it. But we all have established that Wang Nan's like kind of the main character next to Bam, so it makes sense. But like that is one thing that was kind of a bittersweet, where it's like you can't have it all, and it stinks because it's I would like to see. I liked those characters. You know what I mean? Like,
no, definitely.
Like one in particular, the one that keeps coming to the top of my mind is Arc Raptor. You know what I mean? Like, I actually liked that character a lot, and it's not like he's just out for the count, and like he could have very relevant points again, but like he was very overshadowed in this arc in terms of like he would just come in for a random save with a beam or whatever, and it was like that's cool, but it was like I liked those conversations where he'd have with Wang Nan, where it was like he would, you know what I mean, like play dad mode and be like, listen, dude, I know what's up, blah blah blah. Like that character in particular is someone who's definitely not to be underestimated at all. I'm not saying that any of us are, or any of you are, but like, you know what I mean? It's cool to see that again. And so that would be my one gripe. But as a whole, I think that aside, which is a very small thing, I think this is my favorite arc yet.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, to be honest, it's I don't want to say it's hard, because I think it's funny. Season 1 of the series, I think, is something that like you can like or dislike as you go through it, but I think it's only something that you can really appreciate or like get the full oomph out of once like you've passed it, right? And you go back, because it's like, oh shit, they set that stuff up from the jump, or like whatever. But yeah, I think there was so much more payoffs and impacts during this season, or this like arc, that like this was also definitely my favorite arc. I think a lot happened for the story, a lot happened for the characters, and I think as much as we learned about people and like things and stuff, it raised that many more questions about people we don't know, and people and things that are going on that we don't know, and how certain things work that need to be fleshed out. And I'm sure it will. I mean, these sort of like mystery stories, like, need to thrive on that, right? The answer 2 questions but gave you 20. So yeah, I definitely really like this. I definitely get what you're saying, and I do think that there was definitely a sort of too many cooks in the kitchen scenario, where it's like once we had, because I actually think as far as characterization, everybody was at their best when we had Bam's team, which comprised of Bam and Yeon and Wang Nan doing their own thing, and then Khun's team doing their own thing. And I actually think that that's why, if maybe but perhaps SIU is sort of in that mindset here too, because the way he ends this arc is he's like, oh, it'd be nice, but we can't all travel together. Like, we have to actually split up because we're and to be honest, whatever your excuse is, I'm down with it. Because I think if there's a way that you can gear this arc still to where, because my main concern with them being apart was that it would keep them further apart forever, and then nobody would find out that like Bam is operating with these whole dudes or whatever. But like that's what this arc did. We got that done. Everybody knows that this is Bam. We're all back here. We don't have to be with Fug anymore. We're not like running this rigmarole operation. Everybody is here, so much like Khun says, he's like, we can now work together and feed information back and forth and help each other out when we need to. But I think the restrictions of the story, having these characters split up again into 2 groups is going to do wonders for giving every character that much more presence and that much more screen time, and therefore that much more characterization when we get around to swapping back and forth between the 2, and when we get into the Hell Train arc, right? Next. Which is the next thing we're going into. I think everybody, is going to get that much more oomph to their character. But yeah, I loved it.
No, I hope so. It's weird because I feel like just from what people were telling us when we started getting into this is that, like, don't get too attached to a lot of the characters that they introduce, because as they go on, they're just going to keep on throwing more and more and more at you. So I can definitely see, and what I kind of feel like is going to happen, that's almost a fear of mine, is that they are going to take a backseat, similar to what we saw in what happened in here, and that they're just like the supplement is going to be more characters introduced, more backstories, and like, yes, older characters that we know are going to be there, but they're already fleshed out to the extent that he was planning on doing so, and so like they still have relevancy for being there, and it's really like building a community. Oh. All right, well, my headset's not broken, I don't think, but they're still building a community in a sense, but it's like, we're not going to actually have that Arc Raptor and Wang Nan moments, or like that's not going to be like for Prince and like whatever her name is. We're not going to have those little tiny pieces because there's going to be so many new people that we're going to be introduced to that we're learning their backstories, but like they're still going to be hinted on here or there. Although I kind of hope that's not the case. I just feel like that's almost been alluded to just from the community where it's like there's going to be so many characters at the end of it. We're not going to know anybody's name, and like the only way it's going to get to that point is if they keep on introducing them, you know, whether it's through travels, through whatever, or like new companions.
Which I mean, I guess is tough.
If it's done well, I can see liking
that's
it.
the key, right? Is it's like these can't be it. There have to be more characters to the story, right? So it's like you're gonna have to introduce more people, but like I guess it's finding that balance. You don't want to introduce new people so much that you're taking away time that could be used on older characters or established characters. But I don't know. I personally have faith that he'll be able to balance that pretty well. Let's put it this way. Of all the characterization we've gotten from characters so far, I don't really have a reason to doubt that he could do it. I think it's just the main thing, and I think making a manhwa is what gives him the liberty to be doing this, is pacing. I think if he has the time and he sets the pace at a correct speed, we could bang through enough characters and give everybody their due diligence.
I agree, and I'd even argue that he's done it better than a lot of like other shows that I've seen in terms of how you introduce characters. Because, I mean, let's not forget, Season 2 literally started off with a literal new main character and no reference of really anybody prior until eventually we got Bam a couple chapters later. But, like, even coming off of that, which was such a hard left turn, he was able to build these characters and intermingle them so well that, like, we just want to die for them. So, honestly, I can't really see how he can't introduce a new character and, like, not have them like out there in a way that he isn't planning on using them or manipulating them. So,
and I'm also curious as to what he might be able, because he's had this weird thing, or I say weird, I think it's, as a writer, it's actually a really good ability of turning characters on me. Like I dead ass when we met Prince, hated the nigga 100%, could not stand him. I literally wanted Bam to stab him in the face, and now he's cool. And I kind of feel the same way about Beta. Hated that nigga when we first met him, bro. But now it's like, all right, you can hang around. And it's like, this thing of like, and like, sure, I would argue that like, I even made a joke about it during stream. Beta's character turn was a little sudden. He kind of had like the whole,
very sudden.
Yeah, like the whole like, I'm gonna kill Bam, and then like literally a chapter later, he's like, let's go, Team Sweet and Sour, and it's like, that was quick, change your tune. But I feel like having characters set out of the gate where it's like, you're designed to hate this character, and then through some turn of events being like, well, maybe like, again, I feel like it was done much better with Prince, but like that's due to timing. Beta had what, 3 or like a handful of chapters compared to Prince, who had all of Season 2 to do that. But I'm curious to see if he can do that with more of these characters who maybe it might be conventionally a little bit harder to do it, like Casino. I'd be impressed if he could do that with him, because I do not stand that nigga right now at all. And who knows? Maybe even Rachel. I don't believe it can be done, but I could be wrong.
Wow.
Wow, the fact that you're
there might be a chance, to be honest.
I'm leaving it up to SIU. Let's see if he can do it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Where do we think we go from here?
I think Isaiah's getting shipped out for this thing. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, it wasn't me. It was my twin brother who said that. Sorry, I just asked him. I'm back. What happened?
It was Zay.
Yeah.
He was cloned.
It was Zay. I don't know why he would come here and say that. That was fucked up.
Weird.
Anyway.
Oh my God.
So I was saying, where do we think we go from here?
I think.
What are predictions?
So I think obviously we're gonna, going into the Hell Train arc. I think it's going to be important to see. It's going to be important. I kind of feel like we go the route of building 2 different armies, right? And I say armies in air quotes because I'm not talking like literal, like building 2 separate forces, but essentially, again, what I was talking about, where I think it would be cool to see this theme sort of double down on itself, where Rachel, in a certain manner of speaking, builds a force, right, of people that are like on her side, right? And whether that's fuck extremist, whether that's like whoever, right? People that are willing to go use her methodology and her way of thinking to climb the tower. And then have people who are willing to use Bam's ideology and side with his way of thinking and climb the tower. And I think it would be interesting going forward to see how much conflict that can create, because Howard Yeon has an interesting line at the end of these chapters where she talks about the fact that Rachel, this girl, is unpredictable, and she has the ability to change the tower. I personally thought that was alluding to the fact that not necessarily Rachel specifically in like a Uric power sense can change the tower, but that because she's so unpredictable by nature and wants nothing but desires for herself, that like where she's at is always fluid, right? She's willing to move and change on a dime if she needs to climb the tower, and that by nature makes her a force to be reckoned with because she could get all up in the tower's infrastructure and fuck this whole thing up if it means that she gets to the top of the tower. And that's a scary force to be present in something like the tower. But I think Bam's, his group and his way of thinking and his ideology is almost even scarier because it doesn't just work in a manner of getting them all up the tower, but it does so by changing people's mindsets. It does so by bringing people in instead of pushing people out. And so I think it would be interesting to see this theme sort of like really sort of, double down on itself and like really, hit harder next. I keep want to say next season, next arc. Because I think that would be cool. And also, from a story perspective, that theme and premise has been established very well. So I think the next logical thing to do is to push that to its limit and test it, right? It's like, all right, these are what the characters think. What if they're in this scenario? That, you know what I mean? So that's what I think.
Yeah, apparently this arc A is the longest one that we're gonna get so far, and B is very hype. And anything that says Hell Train, I'm on board. No pun intended. So I'm excited for that, and how that shakes up. I do have one fear, and how do I word it? So we're at a point now where we've gotten introduced to a lot of characters. And when you take like the first season, you know that there are your Jahads and your people that are like, boom, everybody else is, sorry, camera can see me. Boom, everybody else is like here, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, but it's like, that's like such a distant thought that it doesn't really play a major role. We've now gotten to the point in season 2, and especially just ending this arc, where our protagonists have moved like here, but from here. But now we are introduced to so many more characters that are here, right, in this level, which kind of scares me because I hope that there's a logistical way and a way that's believable that essentially has it so that these characters piss off out of the main story and only come there very sparingly when they're needed. And the reason I have a slight fear of that is because there are a lot more people that know now of the happenings going on, basically Fug, and it's like Fug knows what's up for basically all of them at this point. There is the family leader, you know what I mean? Who in my opinion, I think knows what's going on. Sure. I don't think he's out of the loop. I think he's too powerful to just let that slide. There are characters now that are just way above their level, even Lero Rowe and stuff. And so power scaling can be something that I really hope is nailed down well, because I would hate to see it where it's characters are in X situation and then it's almost like the Boruto thing where it's Boruto and them, you know what I mean? For everyone on their level are able to do their thing. But then it's once something comes, it's all right, where's Naruto? You know what I mean? And it's where's Yurik? Where's whoever? Where's Jinsung? You know what I mean? And it's that because quite frankly, again, they're here. You know what I mean? And that's fine to see their progression. But sometimes if you introduce characters in such an abundance that are way more powerful, it you know what I mean? It's gonna make I want the believability to be there where it's okay, you know what I mean? Who's to say that these characters can't just be we really want Bam out, step down, you know what I mean? Step back up. I think obviously.
Yeah, I think the Hell Train arc is at least from the way it's been described, is kind of in a way the fast track to that, because they quite literally get to just skip a bunch of floors if they manage to make it. Yeah. But also, we're going to assume that it takes a significant amount of time then to travel on this train. So I'm going to assume that
you said a year and a half to do it.
That's going to be their excuse for oh, we've been through the Hell Train now.
Sure.
We trained that much. So,
I would assume so.
But I get what you're saying, and I think that is a valid concern when we're talking about the tower, because we still don't really know what the whole scale of it is, where it's I know where the top is, and I know where they are. We don't really know. So, somebody who's on the top or close to it, right, could just drop down, like you said, if they really wanted to get rid of this rut and be
But even then, I feel if people try to drop down from that high of notoriety, there are also people who are up there as well that are followers of Bam. So they'll Yurik, if somebody's coming down, he might come and save the day. But I think that's going to be too far in between, because I feel that's where Bam is going to come into play, where like he is going to be the person who has to get him out of these tricky situations.
Yeah,
because that's like his growing development.
Yeah, I guess my point is that some like if we've established that these characters are just so much higher, even for as much as Bam has progressed, I need to believe that Bam actually had the capability to get them out of there. You know what I mean? Because then it's like, it makes sense where it's like if they're walking down, it's like someone who stands Bam is like, well, I'm walking down with you, you know, and like that's fine. But like I don't want that to be the scenario every time.
Right.
And I want it to be Bam, but in it wanting to be Bam, I want it to be believable. You know what I mean?
No,
100%.
I think because even Howard Ryun again has that girl really just kind of tells you the plot. Has another line where she's like, this happiness that you have, like I can tell that you like it and that this feels good. But if you want to keep it, like you're gonna have to make it so that that's possible. Basically saying like if you, which I kind of alludes to what we've been saying, where it's like if you want this situation to stay what it is, there's a lot of strong niggas on that train. Like you're gonna have to like get your shit up to snuff. So I think they'll be able to.
I think it'll be cool. I think it'll be fine. We'll just,
fine. We go back next chapter, everybody's dead. It's just Bam the one, and we're like, well, we're not fine. We're not fine. We're crying.
We're not fine. Abort.
It's
Put it back to Bama.
It's all right. We still have. We still the one plot thread. And I'm not gonna say it was or forgotten about or whatever, because I think again this was all intentional. Is the quarantine princess? At the very beginning of season 2, Yuri tasked her with finding Bam. I haven't really heard anything about that.
No, me neither. I didn't. Yeah.
So I wonder. And the quarantine princess actually, when that exchange happened, she's like, "All right, I'll find this irregular, but you have to do something for me." And Yuri's like, "What?" And then it ends. So I'm wondering that one interaction has literally been in the back of my mind like the entire season 2, because I'm like, well, Bam's here, and he's not really being quiet about it. So like, what are you doing?
Well, and Yuri doesn't know, because they even said they made a point to say that. They're like, Yuri still doesn't know about this. Yeah, that will be interesting.
Very interesting.
Well, because you already know when she finds out Bam's the thing, she's coming down from fucking Evenkel. Oh yeah, matter. She is on that next
heaven
train.
Itself.
Yeah, to that dick, she's going for it. So we'll all find out.
Come for the dick.
That's exactly what it is.
Just marching down that tower.
Oh, you thought it was called Hell Train because of monsters? It's gonna be a wild ride. When
they get on the train,
Jahad
she like fucking tips her little like train hat, and she's like, "I'm the conductor of this bitch," and we're like, "Oh, here we go."
Her train hat.
Oh, Gavin, sign me up for that. Yeah. What the fuck we're talking about?
What have we stumbled into here?
Yeah, are these cameras still on? Shit, sorry.
We're gonna wrap up the discussion now, if that's cool with everyone. Listen, folks, thank you so much for watching, listening, etc. To our almost 2-hour discussion here, which. You're welcome. But no, seriously, I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed our ridiculous and super petty arguments that we have. We put our friendships on the line for your entertainment. We all make up after this.
It's no
all
hard
good.
feelings.
Yeah, exactly. We're all boys. No, just kidding. No, seriously though, thank you so much for tuning in with us. It was a fun discussion, and we're excited to get into these next chapters and start this Hell Train arc so that we can talk about it, we can go live with it, we can get your opinions on it and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a wild ride. But anyway, folks, if you enjoyed the content today, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of our discussion? What did you think of some of the opinions that we put forward? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Nicely. And what did you think of these chapters as a whole? What do you think about Tower of God? Are you excited to go to the Hell Train arc? Also refer to that description where we have all the links to where you can support our channel via social media, Patreon, audio-only platforms, Discord, and our merch site as well if you wanted to support the channel. But until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you on the flip. Peace.
Later.
Peace.
Hey, you know what it is, dog. Ninjas are samurais, blaze of the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.